Okay, I'm going to go over the K3 PV1 series. As with any of our equipment, you get a lifetime dead cost repair replacement program. We're going to go over the simple functions of the system, what comes with it, and so forth. Each of the K3 systems do fluctuate in certain areas based upon the customer's needs, how it's customized, and so forth. As you can see, even the case here, typically we use the case with the laptop rail, but we ended up sacrificing the laptop rail because the customer is able to set it up in such a fashion where they could put the laptop next to the case and so forth. The size of this mixer, the fact that it has the custom fans and the cables that go up and so forth, the laptop glider rail would interfere with it. So that's why we left it open. The system comes with a pair of 15-inch PV 115D powered speakers. Of course, you have your speaker stands. There's a speaker stand bag that comes with the speakers. You have your speaker cables, which are XLR to XLR. The XLR is going straight into the mixer right here, going down into the processor, back out of the processor, and into the speakers. That's how this system is run. If you did not have this processor, then the way that would have been run is straight from here directly to the speakers, instead of, like I said, going from here down to here and then back out of the processor and out to the speakers. What I did as far as the connections when coming out is I actually put patch cables. So this way these are freestanding when the system's not hooked up, and then this is the actual speaker cable that we hooked up to go in. So this makes it a lot easier hooking it up. Then you'll notice on the left and right side here, I actually have two cables. What they are is on channel 13 and 14, which is your last channel right here, you'll notice that I have A and B. These are both basically like computer cables. So if you want to hook up your laptop, you're able to hook that up. Hook up a smartphone, hook up an iPad, different smart devices you can. Then right next to it, the next channel, you have your Karaoke Player, which is hooked up. And then over to the left, you have mic 1 and mic 2. This particular system actually comes with 4 microphones. You have the dual wireless, and then you also have the 2 corded mics. And you could run more mics, or you could use the inserts here. You'll notice you have your microphone inputs all on the top here. This is for balanced inputs. This is the best way to run a system. It is superior to running microphone inputs that are 1/4 inch. And these are the 1/4 inch lines that you could utilize if you don't have XLR. Then you see 1/4 inch inputs right below it. These are your actual line inputs. So unlike a microphone that's taking up the 2, you have the actual line input. So let's say you're running 4 microphones, and then you want to hook up a keyboard, you want to hook up a guitar, and so forth. You're able to hook up different instruments and actually accommodate a band and so forth. Now going back to the inputs that I had set up here, you have a button A and B. So when I switch between these 2 cables, you're just going to push back and forth to each one. Then the same thing with this. Your player is on B, but if you ever wanted to hook up something else, you could potentially put 1/4 inch cables here, or even adapters that go to RCA, and switch back and forth on that. So for this system right here, the individual's using their laptop, then they're going to have iPods that they hook up. That's why they're going to switch back and forth on the A and B. And then whenever they need to play karaoke disc, they have this channel for it. Now going over here again, you have a headphone input jack, so if you wanted to listen to a mix, you can. You also have a monitor send. This is one of the most important things that people fail to realize when doing karaoke. Is one of the biggest things that people complain about when they sing is they can't hear themselves. Because when you build a system with just the regular speakers, those are projected out to the crowd. You have a 50-50 proposition. You'll have 50% of the customers that sing that say they want to hear themselves, and then the other 50% could care less about a monitor. That's why it's not something that's automatically sold with the system, but more so to gauge the customer's feelings on what they feel is best suited for their needs. So you could potentially take a powered speaker, hook it up right here, and then what happens is you have what's called a monitor. You have it on every single channel. Now remember, once you learn one channel, you basically have learned them all. So you just concentrate on the one channel. And what happens is if you hook up a powered monitor, you're going to be able to independently control the monitor and so forth. And even when you're on your microphones, you're able to independently control how much vocals you put into that stage monitor. And then over here you have your actual monitor send. This is how much, this is basically like a master volume. We typically put it around 12 o'clock. You could tinker with it based upon the size of the room. Below that you have what's called an effects send. And this is tied in directly to your effects station. And right now we have it set for the hall reverb and the amount of effects that goes into it and so forth. And then when you look at the mixer, you have the effects right here. Now typically for your music channels, you're going to have your effects knob all the way down. But if you look at your microphones, you have that up. And you can turn it up as much as you want. You could come over here, go to different rooms, and check out different types of reverb, plates, reverb, delays, and so forth. And this will help you choose, basically, for lack of a better word, the type of echo that you want to inject into the system and so forth. As you move down here, you have your LEDs. The one thing you want to remember when you're running a system is you want to stay in the green. Anything we've ever sold PV is probably, for the money, the most efficient equipment we've ever run. This right here, you'll be able to push this system pretty good without this going in the red. But what you want to do is you want to make sure as the music's going, that's bumping up here, it can go into the yellow, meaning that it actually bumps into it. If you hit a major bass note and it just bumps up to the red just for a millisecond, then goes back down, that shouldn't be an issue, but it will tell you that you need to back off of it a little bit. Give you an example. If you are running this and you're running the music and you have basically your lows, your mids, and your highs. You have your EQ right here, and it's basically standard. If you had your bass up here, and then all of a sudden you started playing a song that has a lot more bass response than a standard song, and then all of a sudden it starts going into the clip, one of the things you can do is either turn the volume down a little bit, or go ahead and start backing off your EQ a little bit. And when you do EQ the room, all these, I would suggest that you set them all to 12 o'clock. That includes your microphone inputs and everything. And then go ahead and adjust it based upon the room size and how it sounds. You look up here, this is what's called a gain knob. So basically, when you're utilizing powered speakers, you have more than one volume. You have your master volume, which comes from the powered cabinet, which in this case, the system's running clean enough where I could have this full open, and that's how we would want you to run it. In the event that you feel the system is, making a little too much noise, why no music's being played, and it's a silent room, all you would have to do is basically just bring this down. In fact, I'm going to bring this closer to the speaker and see if we can listen to it. This is the type of sound you might hear when it's all maxed out. And then if I turn it down a little bit, it starts to disappear. But even at this type of noise, even with it maxed out, you're never going to hear this when you're playing the music. It's not going to interfere with it at all. But these are your masters, by the way. And typically we'll put them right around 0. It doesn't mean that you can't bump it up further, but most often, to be safe, you want to stay around 0. And then when you're playing your music, you're just going to start fading it in. And make sure you watch your lights and so forth, like I mentioned earlier. And then there's also what's called a mute button here. So if I'm playing music, and then I need to quickly mute it, I could do this and mute it. And then unmute it. Same thing goes for every single channel. One of the things you can do when you're testing the microphones is you could actually put the master volume all the way down, and then you could start going from here, talking through the microphone, bring it up here, keep bringing this volume up, talk through the microphone. Even though you're not going to hear the microphone, it's still sending a signal, and you'll see the signal blink. And what you do is you wait for it to start clipping. So as you're bringing this up and you're talking, you're going to see the green light blinking, and then all of a sudden the red. Once you start seeing that red, and you want to make sure when you're talking through it, you make sure it's very loud, because you want to stress out the system and try to bring it to its max. So as you're bringing this up, the volume right here, then you're going to start to notice the red. Once you see it even blink a little bit, you just back off of it just a little bit, and then start talking in the microphone really loud and make sure it doesn't clip. And then now you have your maximum gain that you could put on here. Another way you could do this is, depending upon the singer, you may even want to put this down this far. I have singers that their voices are so powerful that you have to keep it down. Then you have some singers that are basically like a mouse, and you have to increase it. So you're basically using these two volume knobs to go ahead and fluctuate the sound and bring it up, fade it in. But most often, you're going to have this volume pretty much right around 2 to maybe even 5 o'clock, or we'll say that's 12 o'clock, 5 is on the knob and so forth. But for safety purposes, we'll keep it at 2, and then you could adjust it. Then it has your highs, mids, and lows, just like all the rest of the channels. That's basically your EQ. Then we go back to, if you ever hook up a monitor, now you can control that. And then this is your effects that you put into the channel. Now let's say you're running your laptop, and then you want it to play the player, but you're still running your laptop sound. One way to fade back and forth is to bring this down and bring this up. Most often when you're done with one channel and you shut off the music, you're really not going to have a problem fading, but this is the proper way to fade back and forth between the two channels that you're going to use. And always remember the A and B button. It doesn't matter if you do this for a year, you're still going to stand there and you switch over to another device and you say, oh, I don't have any sound. And then it'll take you a couple minutes to figure out that, oh yeah, I got to do this. So don't feel bad if that happens, but you want to make sure that you remember these buttons switching from, because it's a 2-channel line. You'll notice that everyone is single to here. Then you have 11 and 12, 13 and 14. Now, let's say you needed to hook up another player, and you already used all this, and you just really need another line. You can take a dual RCA and sum the signal to a single balanced 1/4 inch and basically go in here and use it. It's probably not the best way to do it, but it will work. Now we're going to go down a little bit and look at the front of the system. This is your power conditioner. Basically what it does is this is the voltage meter that hovers between 110 and 126, but you typically want to make sure that you're right in this area or lower. Chances are it won't be a problem. You'll know that something's wrong when the electricity fluctuates. You have 2 light tubes that you turn on when it's dark. But the one thing you want to make sure, if you always have this system plugged in, this is the power source. If you went like this and powered down the system, these lights would still be on because it's powered separately. So you always have to remember to turn this off. Now what's the worst that happens if you do leave it on? It heats up, and then you have to replace the bulb. But for the most part, my experience tells me that you really won't have a huge issue with it. Then also I left a gap in here. It's actually 2 reasons why there's a gap. When you build systems, it's not an exact science. No matter how many systems you do, there's variations in how they build the case. It's never literally, down to the centimeter perfect on every single one. So if you look at the racks, you notice I couldn't put screws in every single one. but I was able to definitely secure these, and I had to leave a gap here, but it ended up working fine because you could slip your remotes right there. Now you look at the second piece of equipment. This is a Vbe processor. Okay? The customer that has this system, he's actually utilizing this for his home. So for his home, this is phenomenal. I mean, this is beyond what someone normally buys for a home. What he wanted was a high-end sound, but still stay below $3,000. And then what he's going to do is he basically has his own laptop, his own music subscription. He's going to jack into the system, and he's going to be good to go. Because he's only using it for karaoke, and he has a pair of 15-inch speakers that are going to... A 15-inch speaker is going to inherently supply a little more bass naturally. So he's going to get a little bass that he could extract out of the speaker that's more than sufficient for karaoke, yet we could tell you that every system that you add a powered sub to, it is a huge difference. It completely changes the dynamics of the system. It's one of those things where this customer bought the system without a subwoofer. He feels he's probably never going to need a subwoofer due to the fact that he's going to have this in his basement. Maybe he's going to move it to a vacation home, or he's going to do small things here and there. But for the most part, he's not going to DJ with it, so he felt he didn't need the bass. But if this same customer came to me 2 years from now and said, hey, you know what? I want to try the sub. Once he gets that sub, the first thing he's going to tell me is he doesn't know how he ever lived without it. So going back to the processor is the same type of equipment where once you use one, you'll never want to run a system without it ever again. And what this processor does is you have live music and reproduce music. They both hit your eardrums different. You hear it different. Even if you can't really ascertain the true difference, other than you know that live sound sounds better, but you really can't pinpoint it all. What happens is when you reproduce music, you have records, you have digital, you have analog, you have pieces of equipment that it's running through. What happens is, the best way I know how to describe it is to say the frequency lines are distorted. They are not the same as its true sound. So what this does is, there are cheaper processors on the market that basically artificially enhance the sound. What this does is it restores some of the frequency. So it's like tug of war. It's tugging on those lines to try to pull them closer to where they were. So like the EQ on the top here, if you adjust this, you'll start to hear the highs, mids, and lows sharpen based upon which one you utilize. With this, it's kind of like that, but it's for the overall system, and it changes the dynamics of it. You have low and high. That's basically like a bass and a treble. And you have it for left and right side. This particular processor does not have the subwoofer out. So if you wanted a subwoofer, we would be using a different processor that looks almost just like this, yet it would have the knobs here, but then it would have a subwoofer controller here. Now below this is your dual wireless microphones. These are probably the most popular professional mics that we've ever sold, and I think it's more so because we don't judge microphones based solely on popularity or whether or not it has 4 microphones or 200 channels. We base it all upon an overall package, meaning that it has to have several factors, and one of the biggest factors that it includes is the personal relationship that we have with the manufacturer. So that's why we would consider these the best wireless microphones that are just under $300 for a dual set. And what happens is, you have a handheld that syncs up with this. You could press auto, hold it in, and scan your room for whatever channel's the best, and then you change the handheld mic to coincide with this. Then below this you have your karaoke player. Normally what someone will do is, if they're not going to use a computer and they just want to use a player and maybe get a hard drive with some music and hook it up to this, that's how they would utilize this player. But for the most part, this system's being utilized just to play karaoke disc in the event that they want to, and they're going to allow the laptop to do the most work. So this is pretty much just going over the basic functions of the system. It all changes based upon the customer's needs. We customize everything from scratch. And that's pretty much it for this system. And then of course we have the HDMI TV. Traditionally for years people used regular TV monitors. We know that we could get VGA computer monitors for cheaper money, but in today's market it's better to spend a little more money and try to get HDMI, RCA, VGA, and have it all. And make sure it's an LED TV, not the cheaper LCDs or the standard VGAs. So you want to make sure you definitely look at that. And then I'm going to bring out the handheld real quick. This is the handheld I was just talking about earlier. When you power this on, you have to hold it in basically until it lights up. Now it's going to be a little hard to see it on the video because of the actual light on the screen. It shows the channel. So let's say I change that channel and then I want it to change this. I would hold the button down and then it would start blinking, and then I change it and then press this again. It's also in the manual. It will show you how to do that as well. And then there's going to be a tutorial. We have tutorial videos on the actual player that's separate, which will give you tutorial links on how to upload CDs. There's even people that, families that, international families that don't just do American karaoke, but they also use DVD karaoke. The player will play all those different formats. And if you wanted to take a DVD karaoke disc, you could basically copy and paste it to a drive and go ahead and play it. So there's a lot of tutorials on that as well. What we do encourage anyone that watches these videos to go ahead and send us questions and suggestions on things you'd like to see or questions you'd like answered via the YouTube videos.